I guess I won't tell a whole lot of people this, but initially I just wanted to reiterate, which I'm sure Carol has done and other people have done, but saying thank you to you guys for being willing to go and do this. Jared, I know that you guys did this 3 years ago too. Dory, I don't think you were on the team then. But this is a huge thing. And I think as a missionary kid myself, like it's always warms my heart to know that there are people that are willing to take of their time to go and care for missionary families. And I know that, like I said this, I think to the elementary team, you will be in Cyprus, and that is beautiful and wonderful. But as someone who's led conferences like this before, that doesn't mean it's just a vacation. So I know that this is maybe a fun trip, but it's also a lot of energy and a lot of time that you guys are putting in. So thank you for that, and resources, I'm sure, as well. So thank you for that. Any preliminary questions before I start talking a lot? Any questions for Carol or for me before we kind of dive in?
I don't think so. I want to say thank you both, Katie and Carol, for all the work you guys have put in for organizing this and for the work of putting the curriculum and everything together. I know that's a lot to do, so thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right. Well then, the way we'll kind of move through this is I'm going to show you just kind of some of the structure that I've put with the drive, so you kind of know where you're finding things. And then we'll move through big picture down into the details, kind of finishing up with what's the actual content and supplies and that kind of thing. So trying to go big picture to small picture there. So let me see what we need to share first. We will share. So this is the link that I posted is to this folder on Google Drive. So this is where you should be able to open things. Oh, but I can't. Okay, hold on. We're still learning. They would like to enter a picture. We're going to allow that. I don't know what it means. Okay, so will this change? Yes. Okay, this is what I was hoping this would do. Okay, so you have this Google Drive, and in there is going to be your full curriculum, which is in a PDF form. Your little theme we'll get into, but is tracing tides. We tried to be a little trendy with our art here. You'll also have a folder that I don't have all this broken down into the folders yet because I ran out of a little bit of time, but I'll just do that as soon as we hang up and get everything in the right folder. But in general, your appendix and guides will have all the extras, and each day will have everything that you would use for that day in case that's an easier way to look at it, or print things like if you wanted to just print the one document rather than having to print the whole curriculum, it'll be there. I'll kind of number it so it goes in order of events of the day, and that'll be each day of the curriculum. And then we have also our little Excel spreadsheet. So we'll go ahead and look at the schedule. This is just the way my brain works. I like having a visual schedule. You don't have to use this if that's not helpful for you. Each day will also have a breakdown that I call a minute by minute. Oh, did that open? Can you guys see the schedule that I'm looking at? No, because I opened it into a different page. Okay, we are learning things. Present something else. There we go. Okay, I think we're all looking at the same thing now. So this is the schedule that is more of a visual take, but each day will also have a minute by minute schedule that you can kind of look at that'll have more detail. But if we want to generally look at the schedule real quick, actually I might just zoom in a little bit for us. So your first 2 days there, I have no plans for you. That is up to you. Meet the TCK leader, also up to you guys. If you wanted to do I didn't make anything for you, but I had an idea if you wanted to do it of one of those bingo games where it's find a person that blank, and you could fill it with things that your team has experienced and done. So it's kind of a way that they would be forced to get to know you by asking you questions.
Actually, I'm going to jump in. I just learned this yesterday. Oh. Not that it matters now, Katie, because this is our last one. But
Great.
The Meet the TCK, and we're going to talk about this, Jared, in the Big Volunteer meeting on Tuesday. That's going to be at a table, not even in your room. But at a table, there's going to be several tables of signups and different things, and you guys can be at a table for your age, and then they'll come up and meet you and say hi, and that's it. So, anyways.
Okay, that is great to know, Carol. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I know. I just learned that yesterday.
Yeah, no, we love information. So in that case, when we later talk about supplies and we talk about welcome bags, and we look at our little medical info or medical info and a parent contact info sheet, then those might be really helpful things to have on that table where as people come out, you can give them a little bag, say welcome. You can have them go ahead and fill out any food allergies or things like that you need to know. Parents can put down their phone numbers. It's a lot easier than trying to track parents down later, especially with high schoolers, because they're probably just going to show up to your room. Chances are their parents will not be taking them there. Okay, so never mind the bingo plan. You could still do that for fun if you wanted to during meet and greet some other time. But then each day I have written in a team huddle. You do not have to do this. This is just if I were leading this kind of conference, I would probably gather with the team each morning to kind of go over the day and make sure we're ready. Alternatively, you could do that at night. I have found at the end of the day, we're kind of like, we don't want to do anything else. So it's up to you guys how you want to manage that. But then I think the teens are joining their family for worship and fun in the morning. And then they're supposed to come to the room around 10. And so I would just suggest having people in the room 15 minutes before that in case anyone shows up early. And just communicating clearly to the teens if the room is open before that or not. Like if they choose to leave their family in the big room, are they allowed to come to this room, or is that not a thing that's available to them? You'll play it by ear. I wouldn't be surprised if teens are like, we don't want to be here. We want to be in this room. And so might want to just be there at random times. So you'll kind of have to navigate with them even during free time. Is this room open to hang out in or not? And that kind of thing. Okay, then our first day, we'll go through all of the details of things later, but we'll do some intros and norms. You'll head into small group, icebreakers, a photo scavenger hunt. So this first day is really just getting to know people and trying to establish that. And you're just going to hit it off with some really light, breezy content in the evening with MK tracks. I say that sarcastically because it's not light or breezy, but that's okay. It's going to be great. And then the next 2 days look the same. We have a Devo and quiet time. We'll talk more about that. A snack and get to know you is what GTK stands for. In your minute by minute schedule, it says the whole thing. We'll go through that as well. You have a session, a small group, a game, and then you dismiss. And the game is really more like if small groups finish, then they can come and join in on a game. But small groups could also choose to go longer if they're having great discussion. I wouldn't choose to cut off a small group in order to come and play a game if they're having fun. Our second evening, the date night, I think is just optional time families might be taking off. So that's just plan it yourselves, do what you want, play games, let it be light and breezy. Our second evening is again our MK tracks. I forgot to change the wording there, so you can just listen to me type on this for a second. And I don't think I've taken my screenshot of this for you yet, so that'll be updated. I've changed the wording on that. We'll talk about that later. And the last day, the timing is just a little bit different because everything starts a little bit later, but it's the same general flow of things. Final small group, we'll go through a guide a little bit later. It's going to be like a combo of discussing the session and also kind of wrapping things up and having closure with your small group. So that is, everything's color coded down here. So if you really want to look at it, you can. That's fun because it's for me and I have a purpose in my color gradients, but you don't have to care. I just like being able to look at it and seeing that there's like a mix of different colors or gradients around, which means there's a mix of how engaged we have to be, if we have to be really dialed in or if we're having fun, that kind of thing. So also on here, we'll talk through it later, but this is going to be, we're going to share something else again. Here we go. Which is weird, but I'm here. Okay, there we go. This is your supply list. It's also on that spreadsheet. We'll talk through that like item by item at the end, but everything's listed there. And in the document that has your curriculum, I also put anything that's linked into an Amazon list, which you have access to and can edit. If that's helpful to just have that on Amazon ready to go with all the referenced things. And then I have suggested small groups for you. You don't have to do them this way. I don't know how many people are on your team, if this breakdown works for you or not, but it would be like 3 girls small groups and 2 guys. It's funny to me that the middle school group is like so heavily guys and your group is like way more girls, and I'm just fascinated by the breakdown. But I split it mostly by age and loosely trying to make sure everybody had somebody else who it wasn't just all US based people together, but we kind of tried to mix some things up and no siblings together, that kind of thing. So I didn't include last names just for security reasons. But use those, don't use those. That's kind of up to you. But there's a couple of things in the curriculum where I've based it on having 5 small groups. So we'll see that in the supplies. You'd see something denoted if it's 1 per small group. I've said 1 per small group so that you can do that math differently if you need to. Or if you want to fill out something different, I have a template here where you can do whatever you want with that. If Google Sheets is a thing that you love as much as I do, because I love a Google Sheet. Okay, any questions so far about our schedules and lists?
Jared, I will email this to you, but I also found out yesterday that you're getting a new student, Anna Tucker.
Okay, great.
So I'll email her name to you, but I just found that out yesterday, so.
Perfect.
Okay, so work her into the system.
Do you have any questions? No, I think we're good so far on the schedule. I think,
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Then what we're going to head to next is I'm just going to pull up the full curriculum and we'll kind of walk through some different bits of that. So we'll talk through the theme in a second, but you can see our little art there. Very, very palmy, exciting things like that. You have your table of contents, which I just updated the page numbers, so they should be correct. And you can see them there. They're kind of hard to see. That's my bad and my design choices. But they are visible if you look hard enough. Or on the pages that don't have the art on them, they're a little bit easier to see. But we'll talk through this program guide first, which just explains different pieces of the program as I have designed it. Again, you guys have freedom to do what you need to do. And I think a lot of this, for those of you that were there last year, will be very familiar. But in general, some overall guiding principles. If you know teenagers, you know that they can think that they're a little bit too cool for school, but we're just going to give them time because they're probably really weird and secretly enjoy everything. They just don't want to admit it. So just, don't be scared off by them in the beginning if they're not interested in things. And then the program is pretty scheduled, but please do prioritize the needs of your students. If what is on the schedule is more deep thinking and feeling, and what your students seem to desperately need is to go run around outside, go run around outside. And you can just get rid of a session or reorganize however you want. Do what is needed for them, because this conference does want to be a relational building time, a fun time, that kind of thing too, even if the content feels a little bit heavy. So don't prioritize content over person is really what we're saying there. And then I don't really have any breaks scheduled in, but you can assume that anytime you transition from one thing to another, there will be a little bit of time, and you can easily take breaks in there as needed. Because you only have them for about like 2.5 hours in the morning. It's a good bit shorter than it was last year. With the evening sessions, it kind of evens out, but it's not a super long block. So that's why I didn't schedule in breaks in the same way as I think I did last time. Because I think last time it was like 3.5 hours that you had them in the morning, which is a long time to do anything. The first day, you saw that block that we do some intros and norms. This is really just for you guys to decide how you want to lead that. You want to introduce your team. Again, you could do something like a bingo game, could be really fun for everybody. Really, and then also in there, you just need to set the norms of what are the expectations in the room, what are things we can and can't touch, what does it mean to leave the room, when is the room open, that kind of thing. You can kind of set all of those rules for them there. I love to involve them in that process of like, what norms do you guys think that we should have together to make this feel like a safe and welcoming environment for us, and let them speak into it as well. On the supply list, you'll have some of those like giant sticky Post-its. If you bring those, you can write down all those norms and hang them in the room as well for reference. This program is really built around the idea of small groups. I think that especially teenage ministry, you got to break it down a little bit so that they can feel safe in a smaller group to talk about things. So again, like I showed you earlier, I have placed people in small groups, but you can also replace them. And I've made suggestions for that, but you can do what you need to do. Usually we separate by age and gender, and each group would be led by a leader of the same gender. But if you don't have the right breakdown, you can do co-ed groups and co-ed leaders. And that can work just as well. It may not be quite as deep of discussion, but that's okay, depending on how everybody feels about it. Okay, so that's small groups. You'll see that we do a bunch of different things in small groups. So you'll see that as we go through. Then we have our sessions. Each day there's a quote unquote session, except that first day, there's not exactly a formal session. But the main sessions are about 30 minutes long, and they lead into a small group discussion time. The main source of content for those will likely require the most preparation. We have one video that we're kind of bringing back from last year, but the other two sessions are both kind of written out lesson plan type. So someone will have to kind of prepare those. Ooh, that's gonna bug me. I've kept the same general themes of like emotions, grief, and TCK connection, but other than TCK connection is pretty much the same as it was last time, but the other two are just presented in a little bit of a different way this time. Each of those content days will also have a devotional, which is, I have it pre-scripted for you, but you can also do whatever you want. The themes generally follow whatever theme was talked about kind of the day before, is a little bit how that goes, I think. Yes. Is kind of how that ends up playing out. And so that's all scripted in there. You could completely toss that out and do whatever you want. You could also take the key passage and riff on it yourself. If your leaders or any of you guys are feeling ready and really like you're feeling passionate about something, or like the Lord is asking you to share something, then absolutely do that. But those are scheduled in for about 15 minutes with about a 30-minute quiet time after, but it's a full 45-minute block, I think, in the schedule. So you can decide how you need to split that up. For quiet time, again, I provide something. If you want to use it, you can. If you don't have to. But it's basically, we'll walk through it more later, but it's the Discovery Bible Study Method, which is 4 columns, where it's very simply like, you read it, you put it in your own words, you ask, what does it say about God? What does it say about mankind? And how am I called to respond? So I've seen that kind of work as a simple outline for students. For those that don't feel super confident engaging with scripture yet, those are kind of usually easier questions to answer. Then we have MK tracks, which we'll walk through more in depth. You might notice that these used to be called MK records because they are based on our dear friend Tim Sanford's Holy Heresies book, which he talks about a jukebox. It's this whole image of a jukebox, but turns out teenagers don't know what jukeboxes are. And so trying to first define a jukebox and then define why it matters turned out to be a lot. So we've rewritten it to be a Spotify playlist instead, where you add a song to the queue instead of a record being pulled up to be played. So we've kind of rewritten that from last time, so that it hopefully connects just a little bit easier. If they don't use Spotify or they don't use playlists at all, then it still won't hit, but it's at least a little more in their language, I think. And then we have, of course, free time and games. If it's a game block, I have not given you anything to do in that, but I have a pretty extensive games list that's in our appendix that you can make use of, or if you work with teens or serve with teens at all, I'm sure you play games and have games you like. So that can either be we're all going to play a group game, or games are open for you to pull out and do what you want with. That's kind of up to you guys to plan that time. One-on-ones is a thing that I, again, encourage, but is, of course, you guys can choose to do or not. But I think the individual connection with students is an amazing thing to add to your program. So the goal with a one-on-one is that a small group leader would meet one-on-one with each student in their small group, or two-on-one. It could be a leader and 2 students if that just felt easier or more comfortable. But meeting one-on-one with the student at least once during the conference, just to kind of get to know them a little bit better, to make them feel special, to show that they are seen and known as an individual. And if they are open about their life, then maybe to even come away with an idea of how does it seem like they're doing? Is there anything that seems like a red flag that we need to raise up to anybody else, like a parent or someone at EPC, EPCWO? That's a lot of letters. But those, I think the easiest way to do those and to make them child safety conscious are if you meet over lunch or over breakfast or over a mealtime like dinner. If you're all eating in the same place, then kind of everybody's around. So that makes it pretty easy to do. This also ended up in the wrong place. So there's a whole one-on-one guide in the appendix that we can look at later too. And the last thing is get to know you. So this is a part that didn't appear in the high school curriculum until last time, I don't think. But it's where I've had a snack. It's also a get to know you. So this is just a spot for a couple of your leaders to do a longer get to know you time, where you could, the idea is that we'll talk through the guide later, but the idea is that they get to know you a little bit better, maybe learn about where you live, learn about your culture, your norms, even if it's just different places around the States, that's fine, or one place in the States, but different families, but just kind of letting them into your lives a little bit, that can be cool. That is our program guide. I will go ahead. We were gonna look through all those guides. That's a lot of work, but we're gonna do it. All right, scroll with me. It's probably an easy way to do this, but this is what we're doing. Okay, so quiet time guide is here. That'll explain more about what I just said earlier about the quiet time. This is our 4-column method there. So you could also print out the quiet time guide for the students if you think they'll want a reminder of all of that. But again, it's just those 4 questions that they're answering with the passage. This is our medical and contact information form that I would say that you want one maybe per family. They can write, just kind of fill out. Generally, I just kind of open it up with what do you think, parent, that we need to know about your child? So they could tell you all sorts of things. They could tell you nothing, because sometimes parents are you don't need to know anything. And there's sometimes times you say, I really wish I had known this. But they might say something about, they get anxious in loud rooms, or they are allergic to gluten, or just all sorts of things could end up on there. And then really the contact information is the most important part, just so that if you need to go find their parent somewhere on this large campus, that you can try to contact them. I believe Carol will tell you this later, but I think you're all downloading the app Signal to use, and so you could probably contact the parents on that as well. I would guess that a lot of them will have it downloaded. This is our one-on-one guide. We talk about when, we talk about what you're doing, and we talk about kind of how to navigate that with students. In general, I'm just kind of pitching it to them as like want to have lunch with me so I can get to know you better. And I don't think that'll feel too weird, but it's up to them. Depending on the student, it might be better to walk around while you do this, kind of have an activity, throw a ball back and forth, be coloring something, depending on the student. If it feels like too much for either party to sit down and stare at each other and speak, enjoying each other over an activity can also be a good idea. This is the games list. There's cards games, there's mixer games, get to know you games, active games. There's a lot. Things like I wrote down every single step of Mafia, which probably nobody needs because I think everybody knows how to play that, but just in case, it's there. And then at the top are a couple of game suggestions that I think that teens are liking these days. The teens that I know enjoy these. But if you also know some others that you already have that you can bring, that's fine too. No need to bring all of these. I just wrote down a lot of ideas for that. So the get to know you guide. So again, this idea is that one of your leaders during each slot would maybe take 15 minutes to share about their life. You could make a PowerPoint about it. You could make videos. You could bring a snack to share that's from where you are, that's kind of quintessential to your life. And the idea is that you're probably asking them a lot of questions about where they're from and their life and their culture. And this is a chance for you to share also. And it provides a lot of time for that conversation to happen. Like if you're sharing about the school that you went to growing up, you can then ask them to share about what kind of schools they're at. If you're talking about food, you can ask them about the foods that they love and enjoy. So it just kind of opens up that conversation a little bit. And also for most of our students, they are probably inevitably moving back to the US someday. And so it kind of, if you're sharing about the US, then it gives them a little idea about what some different places in the US are like, beyond maybe what they've experienced on like a furlough or home assignment. So that's the idea for that. You can read more about it. But this is, again, something you guys would prepare. You can also choose not to do it and just have a little snack time. And that's totally fine as well. I think those are all my guides. Okay. We're gonna go faster this time on our trip back to the top. Okay. Let's go over theme description, then I'll pause, see if you guys have any questions. I assume you would unmute and tell me if you did, but just in case. See, I've moved my little box and now we can't move it back. There we go. Okay. So our theme description, the tracing tides, is mostly I started with the palm trees and then went from there, but that's okay. In general, the description is something you can totally utilize, or you could tell nobody and no one would ever care. And that's fine. You can play it up or you can get rid of it. That's up to you. But the theme description that we've written for this one says, like the pull of the tides, our thoughts, emotions, and relationships often follow patterns, some steady, some stormy. This week we'll trace tides, exploring the deeper currents shaping who we are, what we feel, and how we connect to others. Together we'll name truths, uncover the lies we picked up along the way, and make space for grief and growth. As we dive in, we'll discover that God is present in every wave and invites us into a story bigger and more beautiful than we imagined. So that's the general concept. Again, on our Amazon list, which I'm going to open up, which means I'll need to do my little present something else button over here. So this is the Amazon list that has all the supplies that I've linked to you, and then a bunch of stuff that's just like decor ideas. Not again that you would need to buy all of this, but they're there for you to peruse and consider if you want to do anything like that. Totally fine if you don't. In general, I think from what Carol has told us, you have some pretty big rooms, which just means that it might feel a little sad and empty if we don't put anything in the room, but that's up to you guys. In general, I don't think I have this written down in here, but I would suggest with room setup, if it's a big enough room, that you kind of section off the room into areas of maybe this is where we're like sitting for our sessions, this is where we're playing games, this is where we're doing our journaling time, and you can kind of decorate or supply different things for those as necessary. Chances are you're not going to be able to like have a bunch of extra like pillows and blankets, but in an ideal world, that would be our journaling space. That's where you can make it cozy or something. I put on there like fairy lights for something, so maybe there's a space that has different lighting. So you can just kind of get creative about how you set up your space to invite students into something different in each of the spaces around the room. Okay, any questions before we move on?
I don't think so.
Great. Cheers. Okay. Then what we will do now is we're going to head through all of our content. So we'll just kind of go in order, and I'm going to talk you through it in maybe more detail than you ever asked for, but that's what we're here for. And since I didn't get this to you ahead of time, so you couldn't read it to have questions beforehand, I want to kind of go through it in some detail now so that we can see if you have questions. You can absolutely email me with questions, or I can give you my number too and text me with any questions up until you leave. While you're there, I will be in Ethiopia, so I will probably not be responding to you. So let's try to do that before you go. But you never know. If my phone works, I might say hi anyway. Okay. So first day is Wednesday. First day, I'm not doing anything for the prep days, but first day of the content is Wednesday. And each day you'll have a minute-by-minute schedule like this that will basically take each block that was on our visual schedule. You have your timing. There's a place where you can designate a point person for that. You can use that or not. It's up to you. I think it just can be helpful to know like who's going to be in the room before students get there, who's doing this session, so that you're all on board. Usually what I would do is in that little huddle, maybe one of the days before, we'd go through like the next day's list and assign out who's going to do what. But it'll kind of have some details in the side here. Generally, anything that's bullet pointed or checkboxed is something that kind of has to be prepped or done of some kind. So it's just an easy place to look at the whole day all at once and kind of see what's going on. So the first thing and the content in the day, because you start with your intros and norms and games, and I don't have anything for you for that. And then you start with your small group intros or your first small group session. So that's what this guide is. Oh, I haven't. Okay, one more thing I need to update clearly by my comment there. I need to update our theme for that, but that's okay. So the supplies you're going to want for this are M&Ms or Skittles, maybe Starburst, but really M&Ms work the best color-wise. But it's any kind of piece of candy that has a bunch of different colors. And the idea is that you do an introduction where everyone in this, that you gather in small groups. This is gonna be done in the room, just in circles, and everyone gets like a little bit, they take some candy, and then they answer questions based on what color their candy is. And so if they have a red M&M, then they're answering the red question. If they have a brown M&M, they're answering the brown question. If they have 3 blue M&Ms, they're telling us about 3 family vacations, that kind of thing. So it can be fun, and then they can eat them after they're done sharing about each color. So it's just an easy way to get to know them. If you want to get kind of cutesy with it, they can make a small group name and develop a little identity. And then a bigger thing, I think, for your small group times together is this idea of staking a claim, of finding a spot that your small group's going to meet every time you meet, as much as you can. If you're out and about and you like that bench, but now random person is sitting on the bench, oh well. But as much as they can go around campus, kind of go find a place that they want to be. When they meet with their small group. Consistency is nice there as much as it's able to be had. If small group leaders have like gotten any gifts for their small group, this is a great time to give them out too. I love to do like a matching moment with my small groups for things. So I'll bring like, if I know I have 6 of us, I'll bring like 6 pairs of socks that have funny things on them, or scrunchies or matching pens or something like that. I said this to the middle school group. I don't know what the guy version of those things is. Like, I feel like it probably exists, but I don't know what it is. So that's just what I like to do. It kind of gives us like, it creates a picture moment because you all wear your socks together and then take a little picture. It just kind of can create some identity as a group. And then after your small group time, we have our photo scavenger hunt. So this kind of serves a couple of purposes. One is for everyone to kind of mix up, get to know each other, break some of that ice. Another is to get to know the space that they're in. If they haven't explored a lot yet, this will kind of force them to run around everywhere and know where everything is. So the prep for this looks like I have like a list of pre-done things that they can do with a photo, like take a photo with a tree because there will be a tree. Things that are just going to be anywhere. But then you'll want a couple of leaders that'll walk the grounds and add a couple of more specific ones, maybe harder to find, or just really things specific to that campus. So that's what the blanks are for, so you can write those in. And the idea here is that you're not necessarily doing this in small groups. You could do that, but the idea was more to mix everybody up. So you can mix them up however you want. You could play, in the games list is one called silent sorting, where you could, girls on this side, guys on that side, line up in order of age without talking to each other. And it's kind of forcing them to work together on that anyway, and then just count them off or something would get you a mix of genders and ages in each group. But it's up to you how many groups you want to do and how you want to get them into those groups. But then it's really just kind of letting them loose with a leader, hopefully in each group, that has a phone that can take the photos. And then if you have internet that works well enough, then you can just upload those into like a Google Drive folder or something. And later in the week, you could even put them all in a PowerPoint and look through them together, and that can be fun. Scoring, there's kind of a plan there. for everyone of each time that they get a thing right. So you can score it, tell them who won, maybe the next day after you've had time to count it up. It was just kind of a fun, active activity for the first day there. And then that evening we head into MK tracks. And so this first time I have the whole guide for you here that gives you, every time there's kind of content session, you'll have something that gives you a whole background behind it. So MK tracks, this is going through like lies that MKs tend to believe and trying to rewrite those or re-record them with truth is the idea. And so in here I have the original image of a jukebox and then also a Spotify playlist just detailed in there. But each of these MK track sessions will go 15-ish minutes presenting the lie or records. And then 15 minutes of journaling that everyone will do on their own, and then 15 minutes of sharing in small group. And let's see. So the first session is tracks that we might believe about ourselves. And so this one will also introduce the idea of the Spotify playlist. So I'll walk you through this generally. Written in here is kind of a random example of, a 6-year-old named Chris who had a bad experience with a dog. And now he believes the dogs are dangerous all the time. And this is what that looks like in his life. So you can kind of walk through this with them as an example. But the general idea is that our minds are a lot like Spotify playlists. We experience something, or we experience something a lot of times. We attempt to understand that experience as best we can. And so we draw a conclusion from the experience about what is true, and therefore assume will be true forever. And then a recording of that conclusion is made into a belief statement and added to our playlist. And that new track is mixed, uploaded, ready for future listening. And when we say beliefs, we're not talking about like spiritual beliefs, but just beliefs about the world. And every time a similar situation arises, that same track will jump into the queue and our bodies and minds will respond accordingly. And so we each have one common track or playlist that says, all of these things are true. And when we listen to that, our one track or that belief enough, we begin to make choices based on what that track says. So that's the kind of general concept is we develop these tracks, something happens again that gets added to the queue and plays immediately. And what we need to do is re-record that track and remaster it to tell the truth. So then you'll go through 3 lies or tracks about ourselves of I have to be perfect, I should already know, and I'm here for others. Each one will break down into here's how this track could sound. If you in your own mind, here's how this track could look in your life. And here's why that record made sense or that track made sense. Man, I thought I got all of these when it was first recorded, but may not make sense anymore. See, I got it on that one. The control find feature did not serve me well on that one. And then this is a journaling prompt for students. So after you explain all of it, they go away with this list of tracks, and they're choosing one of them to answer these questions about of kind of what emotions came up when you heard about it, where you see evidence of that in your life. Do you have any idea of where that started? What questions do you have? What is more true than that track? And the goal with them doesn't have to be to answer all the questions. 15 minutes is probably not enough to search their entire soul. For everywhere this exists, but they can get a start on that, and they can answer whichever questions they feel like they're able to answer. And then you'll head into small groups and you'll discuss. So the general structure would be everyone shares which track they circled and why. And then you talk in the small group through what truth can sound like instead. And that's not to say, hey, you guys are wrong, don't believe that, but to start them thinking about how can I actually believe something different. And generally, they all know that. They're like, I know what's true. It's just that I don't actually believe that. So it's navigating that with them of how do we start to try to believe what is true, even if we know it, but we can't kind of put it into our lives. And that is day 1. Any questions about day 1? Where did day 2 go? Something has happened to the formatting. I'll make sure it's reformatted and correct before we get it in there, but some things have moved around in some ways that they shouldn't, but it's fine.
Hey, Jared, you were the one asking about the Polaroid camera, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think we were kind of thinking of doing a lot of the same stuff just with Polaroids instead of a phone.
So I did find out because
fun.
you asked about like security with pictures and all that. Yeah. So yes, Polaroid camera's fine. Just nothing digital. So the rule is just like nothing digital. So Polaroid's great. And then, just sort of be aware of if students don't want their picture taken, whatever.
Yes.
So I think you got it.
That's actually a great thing to ask parents about if they come and meet you beforehand, is also asking them if their children are allowed to be in any photos. Because some parents will just say, like, don't take any, or they might just say, don't post them.
Or yeah, you could say to them, they'll be Polaroid pictures, like we won't take
Yeah.
any digital, and yeah.
And so those are two different situations that parents might feel one way about one and a different way about another.
Perfect.
Part of our thing was too that hopefully they could take them back with them, so that would probably be the same time to ask, right? Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Are we ready to move on to day 2? I think we are. No one has objected, so here we go. Okay, our minute-by-minute schedule for day 2, very similar, just doesn't have our evening session, but we'll have our Devo and quiet time, our snack and get to know you, our session on emotions, small group, and then for you game time. The devotion, this is our first devotion. It's on John 21, 1 through 19, with Peter at the fireside. I think this is the same devotion generally as last time. I think I probably tweaked it a little bit. But it worked really well, and I looked at the students that overlapped, and there were not a ton of students who were there last time. There are some students who were there last time that are there this time, but not like an overwhelming number of them. And I was like, honestly, the chances that they remember just feel so slim. The exact Devo. So if we do this again, because the middle schoolers do have the same one. So if we're here again in 3 years, I'll have to write this one again into something different. But I think for this year, we'll be safe. Quiet time guide is there in the curriculum. For you to reference, and the template there. And after quiet time and Devo and quiet time, we have actually a note on quiet time. I probably didn't put this in the guide, but it's a couple different ways I've done quiet times. Is one version is where we all just spread out in the room and have our quiet time. Another version is where you let them go somewhere out on the grounds. I think depending on how much time you have, you can make that judgment. If you end up with only like 15 minutes, it's probably not worth it to go somewhere. But if you have a whole half hour, it might be worth letting people go somewhere else. But sometimes we'll say, why don't you go in your small group, and then your small group can sit somewhere together, so that a leader still has eyes on them and can bring everybody back at the right time. But you can judge that for yourselves, how you want to do that. Then our emotions guide. So you're going to want some of those giant Post-its on the wall. We have those in your supply list, and then some markers, and then a printing of a feelings wheel that will be in the folder. It's not in the curriculum because formatting just around it was just a nightmare, but there will be a PDF in the folder for you to print. I'm going to actually write that down because I don't know if it's in there yet. Feelings wheel. Okay. And I really just forgot to rewrite these things. I really thought I was fully done with all this curriculum. I just left my comments in there. But we'll redecide, it'll be tracing tides. It'll be the same words. These are copied from the middle school curriculum because a lot of the theme titles are the same, even if we're teaching things very differently. Their theme is decoding us like a spy. So very, very kitschy. Didn't feel like it would work well for high schoolers. But the background behind talking about emotions is just that third culture kids, and especially missionary kids, struggle kind of to have an emotional vocabulary to express their emotions. This has probably changed some in recent years. I feel like this is talked about a lot more than it was when I was a kid. But I think there's still this struggle to know that they're allowed to feel and express their emotions freely in some extent, and judge well what is an expression. Like, I can feel this, but I can't express it this way. Like, what's the differentiation there? If I say that, hey, no, you can't just yell at me, it doesn't mean I'm trying to squash your emotion. It's just what's the appropriate way to express that emotion right now. And so the goal of this session is to build their emotional vocabulary, practice expressing themselves, and develop a more thorough vocabulary that will help process their stories. So this one it has some of the same ideas from last time, but is changed up a bit. But we're going to compare our emotions to our phone's notifications, like a battery notification. You can actually extend that to any notification, truly. But the idea is that our emotions are like indicators or notifications on our phone. They aren't bad or wrong. They just tell us something that is true, that is going on, that needs attention. And just like we wouldn't, put a smiley face sticker over the battery notification on our phone, we don't need to do that with our emotions either, because when we do cover them up and just ignore them for too long, just like our phone will kind of run out of battery, we'll end up numbing out all of our emotions and won't be able to feel anything if we do that too long. So you'll go through that analogy, you'll go through categorizing emotions if they aren't necessarily good or bad or right or wrong, but they could actually be recategorized a different way. And so we kind of have some different options here of, where are they? Here, like they could be comfortable and uncomfortable. They could be energizing and draining. They could be empowering and disempowering. I think that's language that's new to this lesson from last time. And then the differentiation comes in of like, we can feel whatever we need to feel, but how we respond and act can absolutely be right and wrong. And so what does that look like in our lives? And then last time, I think we talked about the idea of, we kind of zoomed in on 3 emotions and the what they notify us about and what they invite us to. But this time we're going to kind of zoom out a little bit to all 8 core emotions. And looking at how each emotion notifies us of something and invites us to action in a certain way. So like sadness, and these notes are pretty small, but you could totally expand this with giving examples each time, giving an example of one in your life, whoever's doing that session, talking through it a little bit more. So I didn't necessarily fully script our list. You could just read it the way it is, but it might be helpful to add a little bit of color to those. But like sadness will notify us that there's been loss or disappointment, that things are not how they're supposed to be. And the invitation of sadness is grief. Hurt notifies us that something valuable has been injured, and the invitation is towards healing, towards change, and taking ownership. A great example there is, a broken leg a leg has been hurt, but time plus proper care is necessary for healing. It's not just time will heal all wounds kind of thing. Loneliness notifies us that we are made for connection and desire belonging, but that maybe we don't have that right now. And it invites us to pursue connection and to remember that God is with us. So some of these have a couple of invitations. This one has 2. Anger is a more complicated one because we split that into primary anger and secondary anger. So it's this idea that we often will choose anger over other emotions because it's easier to feel. And not that we enjoy it, but it gives us a sense of control, and it feels less vulnerable often than the feeling that it might be covering up. So if we talk about primary anger, that's if we really are just feeling angry. And that notifies us to the presence of injustice, oppression, and exploitation in the world, and invites us to create justice and rightness in the world around us. But secondary anger, if it's covering up something else, then what that notifies us to is that we are feeling something that we'd rather not feel, and things are not turning out how I want them to. And that invites us to explore what the primary emotion might be, and potentially our selfish motivations in wanting to cover it up. And then really, it also invites us to finding a healthy outlet to express that anger well. Fear notifies us that danger is near, something around me may potentially harm me or do me damage. And it invites us to caution and evaluation, but it also invites us to courage, which is not the absence of fear, but walking towards something that we fear if we need to. Guilt notifies us that we've done something wrong, the presence of sin or mistreating somebody else, and it invites godly sorrow and repentance. Whereas shame notifies us that there's something wrong with me. So in a healthy shame, we can accept that we have limitations. And that's what that shame is telling me, is that I have limitations that I don't like. And we need each other and other people. Unhealthy shame will say that we are not enough. And that means that we're a failure, useless, or wrong. So you'll want to kind of talk through, I think, that shame is not inherently a bad emotion, but most of the time that we feel it, it's probably not doing its job very well. And so we might need to rewrite that in our lives a little bit. But the invitation of shame is to vulnerability, the willingness to expose our flaws and shortcomings to another person in a safe environment. It invites us back to the truth of who we are, we're made in God's image to reflect God's character in the world. And the last one is the invitation, or the notification of gladness. It notifies us to the presence of hope, even in the midst of our other emotions. And it invites us to know the depth of our emotions. So we talk about gladness, and gladness is not just the absence of everything else. Happiness is not the absence of feeling all the hard things. It's actually a feeling all of its own. And if we numb out all the other things, we can't feel this one anymore. So if we turn off all the notifications on our phone, even the gladness notification gets turned off too. You probably can selectively do that, but in our hypothetical world, maybe this is a really old phone and you can't selectively do that. And then we'll give everyone a feelings wheel that we'll use in small groups as well. And small groups will focus on kind of those 8 emotions, which ones are easy for you to express, which ones are hard for you to express. A new question that we've put in here which is maybe a little spicy. But are there any of these 8 emotions or any on the feelings wheel that you feel are off limits in your home or or your community, that you feel like you're not allowed to feel? And how do you know that? I asked this question to a youth group here in the States, kind of thinking like they're not really going to share, but it opened up a lot. It just was a really helpful way to get to know some of those students. Like, this is why you are the way that you are. And they don't need this to sound blamey. We don't need to say, oh my gosh, your parents are terrible people. That is not the goal of this question. But it's okay, you're getting to know the culture of your house. And chances are your parents learned that in their homes also. And so what does it look like to choose courage? What's that invitation of being afraid to express that in your house? What does it look like to choose courage and begin to express that, or have an open conversation with your parents about saying, I don't feel like I can feel sad around you. So we want to invite them to action and to taking in relationship with their parents, not make this a blaming conversation or an isolating conversation, but actually if we can identify the problem, then you can actually find a solution to it. And that's a better place to be. And the last question is really just like, do you have someone in your life that you can talk about your emotions with? And if they say, similarly, we're not going to prompt them to say their parents. If they do, that's beautiful and lovely. But for a lot of kids, it's not their parents. And so we don't want to try to force them into thinking that we don't want them to lie to us and just say that that's true for them because we've prompted them. They also might say that they don't feel like they have anyone they can be honest about their emotions with. And again, we don't have to try to fix that for them because you guys are not in their lives in real life when they're going to go home after the conference. So trying to force that isn't necessarily helpful. You can feel that out. Maybe it'll be helpful to brainstorm with them. But you can also just say, you're really sorry that's true. Thank you for sharing and being honest about that. And hope. And I hope, I can hope and pray that the Lord will provide you someone that you feel like you can be honest about that with. That's okay. Okay, that's emotions. These are student notes just for them to kind of write down as you go through each of those different things. That might be helpful to put out a giant Post-it or make a PowerPoint of, something like that, where you could distill these down for them so that they can have those in front of them during small group and as they continue to process. Any questions about the emotion session? Okay. All right. Moving on to day 3. We're almost there. So this is another, isn't day 3 the long one? Man, okay. Day 3, need to update that. Because day 3 should be, day 3 is where we don't have, nope, day 3 is the second MK tracks. So I just need to add that to your minute by minute. Sorry about that. But you're going to worship with the family, Devo quiet time, snack, get to know you, same schedule as yesterday. Session 2 is on grief. And then we'll have small group, free games, dismiss. And then in the evening, we'll have our MK tracks session. We'll show up here just shortly after this call. So this Devo is going to be on Hebrews 4, that Jesus empathizes with us and our experiences. So that really connects back to emotions, but it also connects into grief that we're talking about today. And that God is with us in our grief is kind of the main idea there, or is with us in our experiences, and then we can extend that into our grief. Grief, we are switching, so the grief session is revamped entirely. We're going to focus more on the grief tower, which is a concept by Lauren Wells that I am borrowing all of this from, so credit where credit is due. Background information there is just that grief is something that all people struggle with, right? But Lauren Wells, when she talks about it, she talks about the grief tower as these blocks of grief. So these are going to be intense times of fear or feeling unsafe. These are going to be any time you've moved, anything that we would consider trauma, any other intense seasons of mental health issues, or just seasons that something big happened, some big thing happened. In a negative respect. So the blocks on our tower, the idea is that they stack on top of each other as we experience them. And if we don't unstack them, then we end up with a really tall, unstable tower that topples one day. And I think she said something like, I don't know what it is for the normal average human being, but that missionary kids of those types of things that I described will often have, by the time they're 18, will often have 20 blocks on their tower. And there's another stat out there that says that missionary kids tend to experience the same amount of grief-inducing experiences as someone does in their whole life in their first 18 years. That's not everybody, and that's not every experience, but grief is just very common. There's a lot of goodbyes being said, a lot of transition. And so what that just is important because when we don't address that, when we don't process our grief, it stacks up. And often that tower will crash between the ages of 18 and 25. And I found that to be true at working with missionary kids of like, we all kind of crashed out a bit somewhere in that like college to early adult stage. And not, I say it kind of cavalierly, but in some pretty severe ways. And so what Lauren Wells' research has found is when you process your grief and are able to work through that, it lessens your risk of mental health issues later on. It lessens your health, like your physical health is better. Just all sorts of things come with processing your grief. And because that is very prevalent with the audience that we're with, we talk about grief, even though it's not particularly fun. Although I weirdly very much enjoy it. I think it's just one of those things. You attach to an idea and you like talking about it. But what we're going to do here is you're going to spend some time first defining grief and loss. So I define grief as just a response to loss. And that's a response that we can't really have if we don't name the loss first. So you'll talk about some different things that you can lose. And then this is really an activity-based kind of lesson, which does require you to buy a whole set of Jenga for every small group that you have. But I think it's going to be worth it. And I checked and online, it's only like £2 per set. So that's not crazy. If you're bringing supplies, I think you can do it. But depending on how many small groups you end up with, you'll have to decide how many of those you're buying. And so the idea with this lesson is, and this is one that the elementary is also playing. I actually didn't put it in the middle school curriculum, but after writing it here, I really liked it. So I think I'm actually going to email the middle school team and be like, we're going to switch this up if you're open to it. So it ideally would be something that everybody is actually doing that day across all 3 age groups, just at varying levels of depth. So you can play 1 round of regular Jenga just because it's fun. But for the second round, you're going to play Jenga again. But you're going to, when you pull out a block, you're going to tell about a time that you felt a difficult emotion or experienced a loss. And you're just going to kind of name that block. There's some different ideas to give them that you can display of like things you can lose include places, people, activities, future plans, sense of safety, routine or stability, just kind of to help get them thinking. But the idea is that they are naming that block and then they're putting it down in front of them. And as they pick a block each time, they're stacking their own blocks one on top of each other. So they're making their own tower in front of them. And so that after you've played that, everybody has their own grief tower in front of them that's been named and stacked. And then we have just a little object lesson moment where then we ask them to unstack them one by one, just very carefully trying to make as little noise as possible. And we ask some very obvious questions, of which version of the tower coming down felt better, the big crash when you first played normal Jenga or the calm unstacking. And now, I said this to middle schoolers too, you'll inevitably have some students that are like, the crashing was better. Woo, we love chaos. That's fine. We get it. We can laugh with them. So we have some follow-up questions that will hopefully get the point home of, which was easier to clean up, which makes a bigger mess, which was more destructive. You can kind of ask other questions to get them through that, and that's totally okay. And then connecting that to our grief towers. When our personal towers stack up really high, if we don't unstack them and they crash, then that's really destructive. But unstacking them is a much calmer, a much less destructive way to process through our grief. And then the high schoolers, what they'll do is a little bit of an individual activity of making a grief timeline for themselves. I don't entirely expect them to finish this, but the idea is to get them started. And so it's giving everyone kind of a bigger sheet of paper. It's at like 11 by 17 size, if you're able to find it, so that they have a bigger space to work with. If you really wanted to make it feel like a timeline, you could even cut those in half and glue them together. So it's a really long strip, but that's kind of up to you. And then a Ziploc bag for each person, because they're each going to get some of those Jenga blocks to work with as well. So the idea of this activity is that they'll make a life timeline for themselves. So they can do that however they want, but the idea is that it's including these bullet points. So these you might want to write up somewhere, but it's including every time they've moved, including when they were just home for a year or for a few months, home being the US or their passport country. I'm not actually sure if everybody here is US based or not. They're including any significant losses they can remember. That could be a friend moving away, someone passing away, a pet dying, anything like that. Significant or difficult events that they can remember, any intense moments of fear, and seasons of grief that they can remember. And we want them to participate in this, but if anyone is kind of hesitant and like, I don't really want to do this a lot, we don't need to push them into making it deeper. You are not counselors. We're aware of that, unless you are. Maybe you have counselors with you. I don't know. But in general, we want to be aware that if we are not trained counselors, then we might not be ready for the Pandora's box that we could open if we push someone to be more vulnerable than they feel like they're ready to be in this context. So we're going to let them lead that. If they're like, I don't want to do this at all, you can be like, well, we can make a little timeline of your life. That's okay. If that's all you can do right now, that's fine. But I think there are some of them that even if it's just their moves or just some of those things that aren't necessarily like the gut-wrenching moments, they might be able to work this with that even. So it's okay if they don't go uber deep. That's fine. But then after they make their timeline, the idea is that they're taking some of the Jenga blocks. And so there's 54 pieces in a set. So if you have small groups of 5, they could each get 10. So give or take 10 blocks. And they're choosing things from their timeline and writing them on the block. So they're actually making their own grief tower that actually has names on it. So they're writing a word or a title for each of the events on their timeline that they choose. And then on the 2 other sides, they're writing 2 emotions that they felt or that they feel around that event. And then on the 4th side, writing a person that they could talk to about that event. And then keep going until they either fill in all 10 or time runs out is the idea there. And then they get to put their blocks in a little Ziploc and take those home. So that's the idea of the grief tower, is kind of trying to teach them a concept and a visual idea for what their grief is doing, and then also work on starting the process of teaching them how to unstack and process it. Again, our goal is not to have them fully process and unstack their grief towers in a 30-minute session. That would be wild. And our goal is probably not to do that ourselves either way. There is training out there for people that want to work with people in that way. But this is something that can get them started. That is also something they can go home and show their parents and say, look at this thing we learned. So then also in small groups, you are asking people how they're feeling, asking how they normally respond to hard events, and then giving the opportunity to share blocks, asking everyone to choose 2 or 3 to share with the group. And again, if they don't want to, they don't have to. But you can also encourage them of like, if you don't want to share your deepest, darkest block, you can choose whichever ones you would like to share with the group. And then we were just reminding them that this isn't the end of the process and asking them who at home they think they could share these things with. So really trying to connect them with someone who's in their life regularly, and giving them the opportunity to think through talking out loud about these things with them. All right, any pausing needed? We're good on the grief tower? Cheers. All right, then we have NK Tracks session 2. So this time you'll kind of review the playlist concept, and then we're looking at 3 tracks that might be true about other people. So I can't trust anyone, other people's needs are more important than my own, and God is disappointed in me. And again, these will go with, here's how this might sound in your head, here's how this might look in your life, and then here's why this track might have made sense at some point to you, or how it got recorded, or why it made sense that it was recorded in the first place. And then you'll have the journaling prompt again, same thing, but you'll need to print these out separately because they do have the different whys at the top. So can't just copy the one for both times. You got to print the 2 separate copies. And then the discussion guide again is the same thing, but this has the truths for the corresponding tracks. The God is disappointed in me one is a little testy. People might have disagreements about this. But in general, disappointment revolves around our expectations of people and them not living up to our expectations. And so if God kind of knows everything about us and knows what choices we're going to make, I think it's like actually quite impossible for him to be disappointed in us in some ways. So that's kind of how we're getting around that, is that he feels all sorts of things about you. Disappointment is not one of them. And rather he loves you, delights in you, protects you, provides for you, kind of trying to hammer in some of those things that we do see in scripture rather than disappointment. And that is the end of day 3. And unless anyone stops me, I'm just going to keep going. All right. So we have now day 4, our last day. So again, our timing is a little different. That's reflected on your minute-by-minute schedule, where they're kind of coming at 10:30 instead of 10. But you've got your last Devo and quiet time, stack and get to know you, session 3, your final small group, and then a short closing moment. Not even a session, but a moment. So our Devo this day is on 1 Corinthians 12 through 17, which is the different parts of the body are all work together and all needed. It's that passage. So just kind of instituting of like, if we're different, it's not because we're weird or because we're wrong, but it's actually because God made us all to be different so that we can work together. is the concept that we're driving home there. TCKs and connection. Our background with this one is that we live, TCKs live in a highly mobile world. So relationships are always changing and always moving. And it just kind of creates a relational pattern that the people that they meet later in life might not have, or that they're not really sure what to do with. So an example of that is true for some TCKs is that we meet people and we go deep with them almost immediately. Whereas maybe a more classically American culture or Western culture way of doing friendships is that you're going to do things with people over time and then eventually get deep with them. Whereas for the TCKs, a lot of us are like, we don't have time for that. We don't know how long they're here. We can't waste time doing things. Terrible. So it's just it's exploring some of those relational patterns, and what does it look like to prioritize connection in our lives. And so our goal is to help them understand the way that they naturally engage in relationships and equip them with some ways to give themselves and others grace in that process of figuring that out with friends. So this is going to be our video. It is the same video as last time. So if you absolutely hated that, do reach out to me and we can figure something else out instead. But it's a talk that my friend Ben did, and I just really like the way he talks about it. And he has these little 3 steps at the end that he called the ABGs. I can't for the life of me remember what they stand for, except that it should be ABC, and it's not, and that bugs me. It's acknowledge your feelings, be patient with yourself and others, and give grace to yourself and others. So it kind of has this great wrap up with what to do. And then this is that small group that's going to be shared between this and what's next, which is our final small group guide. And so this one, it might be cut short. So if you're leading a small group, it might be best to prioritize 1 or 2 questions for them instead. But I think it's also a pretty easy concept to grasp onto, so they won't necessarily need as much of that discussion to get through it. There's some session notes in there that we'll print out for students. And then it comes to our final small group, which is the same small group block. But because this group has had some sort of time together and have gotten to know each other, this is how we model saying goodbye well. We're not talking them through the steps of saying goodbye, but we're just going to do it with them anyway. So during this time, we ask the leaders to share like an affirmation with the group of some kind of just like, this is what this time has meant to me. This is what I've seen in you guys, that kind of thing, what they'll remember about them. And then doing an affirmation activity. So in the small group where every student would get a page, a paper of a card or nice paper, they'd write their name at the top, and then you pass that paper around the circle and you write something nice about that person on each paper. And so it's, you can set a timer for 45 seconds, a minute, and just pass them. And so at the end, you end up with a paper with all of these lovely things that people have said to you, which, might be, hey, you're nice. And that's okay. So hopefully at least the leader will have a little something of substance to say to everybody. But that is something that they get to keep as a memento of this time that I think can hopefully also help encourage them in that connection. So it kind of ties into the session also because it is talking about connection with them and their group also. And then you're marking this as your last small group, kind of like this is the last time we're meeting. I'll probably see you around, but this is a closure of some kind. And that's really what the closing session guide is too. There's, some space, maybe you're reviewing the major themes of the week. And then reviewing, kind of acknowledging that this is the end of the program. Again, there's all sorts of things that evening, or you might see people the next day. And we're still clearly going to talk to you, but the kind of marking that this is the end of the program, the room is going to get packed up, all that kind of thing. And then, anything that the leaders might want to share with the whole group. They could do whole group affirmations. They could talk about things, that you've learned from them, a specific challenge that you might have for them, something like that. And then closing in prayer to end the time and just mark it as the end. All right, that is the curriculum. That is the whole thing. I'm going to stop presenting that right now. Any questions about the curriculum? All we have left is to talk through supplies.
No, I don't think so. It seems pretty similar to last 3 years ago. So yeah.
Yep. It is similar in vibes. Let me move one more thing into our little folder here. All right. Well, then let's talk through supplies quick before we peace out. So on that spreadsheet is the supply list. And there's a lot of these things that are suggested, but everything that is in one of the sessions is required is also on this list. So you'll see that mostly under curriculum. So if you buy this whole list, you will end up with everything that you need. If you choose not to buy everything on the list, you might not. And so you just want to be careful about that, of noting like, what is that supply used for? So like we talked about before, for the decor, there's all sorts of things recommended here that you may or may not get. Again, like I do not expect everyone to buy this much stuff for decor, but I kind of tried to brainstorm for you and find some thoughts, put them in there. You get what you want, what you have budget for, what you have space for, and you can decide that yourself. There's some general supplies like, pens, markers, that kind of thing. Giant Post-its, like I live and die by these things. You don't have to buy brand name. They're probably a lot cheaper if you don't, but I like these even more than a whiteboard because then you can keep them up and have them around the room. The best way to pack these I have found is there's a cardboard backing on them. And if you kind of cut that off, then you can just roll them up in kind of a length of sorts. You can kind of roll them up. And then when you use them in the room, you just want them on a hard wall of some kind so that you can still write on them.
So Katie, just so you know, because I've been in the other meetings with you, when you click on the link in Google Meet, it does not show the Amazon page. Oh, when you hover, it does.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I did click on it. You're right.
Okay, so I'm just letting you know so you're aware.
Because, yeah, I did forget that wasn't just going to follow me over there. Thank you, Carol. Oh, dear. Dry erase markers are kind of a question mark. I know, Carol, we talked about in the last process that part of the meeting on Tuesday is going to be like, what kinds of things do you want in the room? So if you end up with a whiteboard in the room, that's helpful. If not, that's okay. Some other things that you may or may decide you don't want is like a first aid kit, disinfecting wipes, hand sanitizer. Really, first aid kit mostly is just a Band-Aid moment. Or like people are going to be like, do you have Advil? Do you have Tylenol? That kind of thing. Which it's totally fine if you want to not plan for that because they will be with their parents probably within the hour. And they can just take care of that themselves. As far as tech, I suggest bringing a Bluetooth speaker and charger so that you can play music in the room. It's a huge part of ambiance. And again, they might have a hookup there where they can get you a speaker, but I feel like it's always just easier to have your own Bluetooth speaker so you can control it yourself. You want to make a quiet time playlist, a free time playlist that's safe for our teens. Projector and screen, not expecting you to bring that, but I think that's something you'll want to request to have in the room if you can. Computer to connect to the projector, and then any adapters you might need. So assuming it's probably an HDMI cord that they'd be using, you want to be able to connect with that. But also you're overseas, so it might be that really old school one with all the dots that you got to like screw in a little bit on the sides. So you might want to plan for that as well. This is all the stuff for welcome bag that I mentioned that it might be helpful to have at the table during that meet and greet time. In general, just a paper bag is an easy way to do that. No one will keep that there. You don't feel bad about throwing it away. One of these things, the journal is the only thing I really think is a great thing to have. These are marketed as a girl students journals. I couldn't tell you why. They're just brown journals with lines in them. Don't know what Amazon is doing with that. But there's lots of sellers of these. I didn't shop around for like the best. You're right. Nobody's looking at this. Because I didn't. There we go. Hovering over it now. I didn't shop around for the best deals, so you might be able to find a better deal somewhere else. But I suggest having those for students because if we're asking them to do a quiet time, asking them to journal, we don't know if they've all brought one with them. So that just guarantees that they have something for that. And then these are just other small things that you can include in there. Dish packet, hand sanitizer, like Rice Krispie Treat, fruit snacks, a candy. Trying to think. I don't know what everybody likes or what they don't have access to, but I know like Reese's we couldn't get where I lived, so that was always really exciting if someone brought a Reese's. For some reason, Hershey's Kisses I also loved, even though I had access to such better chocolate. I was be like, no, but it's got to be the little foil thing. So you guys can brainstorm what kind of candy you might want to get, anything that's popular. I have found with students also working with them now in Orlando that a lot of them like a candy more than they like a chocolate, which is wild to me. But Sour Patch Kids, the Airhead straws, Sweet Tart straws, those are all really popular choices. You could get a little globe stress ball if you want. Those are kind of fun to have around. And what else did I suggest? Drink packets. Again, these are all suggestions of just like little gifts, little things to put in here. Very stocking stuffer type moments. And then curriculum stuff, a lot of this is just stuff to print. You'll notice that I put whether or not it needs to be printed over here. So in your appendix and guides folder, again, later tonight, I will have a small group leader guide that'll have all of the small group questions in one document that you can print off. The photo scavenger hunt guide, student session notes. Again, I can put all those into one document. Actually, that's probably more complicated, but they'll be in there. So just making sure you have student notes printed off. The MK Tracks journaling prompts, the quiet time templates, the feelings wheel, that kind of thing will all be in there to print. You want to get your Jengas that we've already talked about. I linked a specific one that's not Jenga brand because Jenga prints their logo on the side. And so since we're asking them to write on the blocks, you just want to find one that's blank all the way around. And then some fine tipped markers of some kind. It could be Sharpie markers. These are a little cheaper that have a really fine tip to be able to write on the wood. For that, program schedule, that 11 by 17 paper for them to do their timelines on. M&Ms or another colored candy for that first small group game that they're going to play. And then that cards or nice paper for that final small group that they'll do together. And then I don't know what the grounds are like there if you have like open green space, but if there is open green space, I'm sure you can probably find the website and find out. Bringing some kind of sports balls or frisbees or a spike ball set or something like that. I have found that sports balls, it's best to bring them deflated and bring a pump to blow them up once you get there, or else they might pop in the air, and you don't want that. Nobody wants that. So you can bring those with you as well. And then any games you want to buy, I think it does appear somewhere in general. We just kind of had games. So I didn't tell you to bring certain ones, but you can pack whatever games or decks of cards, things like that you want. Okay, and the last thing to show you is, where'd it go? Let's go, so over in our folder, there is, I gotta go click on that. This is very similar to the resource thing that I gave for the TCK training, but this is one that I would suggest having printed off to give to parents. Obviously, if you print it, the links won't work anymore. That's okay. A lot of these are available on like Kindle, and so you can tell them that's why Amazon's there. Or you can edit it and change it. I can update the sharing settings. But it's just a lot of the content came from these resources. Like we have the Grief Tower book on here. We have the I Have to Be Perfect one that's from the MK Tracks. So a lot of this is the content. So if parents want to know more, this is their go-to list for all of that. And that will just be in the folder, and you can print those off if you'd like to. All right. That is all that I have for you today. Other than my promise that those will all be before. I'll email. I think it's Jared's email that I have. I'll email him to confirm when I've got everything organized the right way and to fix my little blunders that we found as we went through. But I'll email him tonight or early tomorrow to say, okay, it's final. You can actually print now if you're ready. Hoping that no one is trying to print tonight. But yeah, any questions that we have? Any last things or questions for Carol as well? If you have her here, which is convenient.
I have something if nobody has questions. So just a reminder about the Signal app. So I'm gonna we'll probably send an email or talk about it again on Tuesday, but just have your team download Signal and get that set up. I'll create that group at some point. Everyone on this call has done their ministry safe training, so thank you, and just thank you for all the forms and all the things that you guys did for child safety. Really appreciate that. We're going to be doing, I'll be doing kind of more detailed kind of training once we get to Cyprus. So Jared, can we chat real quick about your possible room needs based just from what you know from what Katie has said for the curriculum? That way I can get some notes to Yasmin.
Yeah.
And so sorry for the confusion about a room for you guys. So I was told, anyways, I went by what I was told. So we will find a room. There will be a room for you guys. So anyways, so what are your thoughts right now, just from hearing this, of what you might need in the room, like how many tables, chairs, that kind of thing?
Yeah. I say with 26 students, and then what do we have? 8 adults. So probably, I don't know if we need any more than a chair per person. Probably not. Yeah.
We can always move the chairs around.
Yeah, moving chairs isn't a problem at all. Table wise, I'm just trying to think of how So with the curriculum being as similar as it was last time, I feel like we kind of did like a semicircle of tables, but we could change that up a little bit. Trying to think if we need.
We need tables because we have some activities.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're nice to put supplies on and under too.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking one for snacks. That was handy.
Mm.
And if we just do it like you said, stations. I was thinking of station 4 where we do some of the activities that like Dory was planning and stuff.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know how many they would. Just enough tables for 25 students to set out, plus one for snacks. Would that be?
Yeah,
one or
probably.
two for snacks.
Yeah, tables for 25, probably on one side of the table, I'd guess. Probably not two side of the table.
We could do two.
You think?
Either way.
Yeah.
So I guess yeah, because I guess we don't know how big the tables are going to be.
Right. Yeah.
All right, to make a circle or like a semicircle.
And it doesn't have to be a summit. I mean, we could do
Just,
Right.
a
And you
different
guys can
setup.
figure out, yeah,
Right,
like
yeah,
how you
we'll
want
set
it.
it
Yeah.
up, exactly.
And so sorry, how many chairs did you say? I missed the number.
Probably 34 would be good.
Okay. And we can always add more as needed or take away whatever.
Right.
Does that include the new student I told you? Should we make it to 35?
Yes,
Yeah.
that includes the yeah, that includes the new one.
Okay, all right. Okay, so, and then you wanted an extra table for snack.
Yep.
What about extra table for supplies or anything?
Yeah, probably one more.
Okay. And I think I did hear that they would have whiteboards that we could use. I mean, we'll double check that, but heard that yesterday. So, but you guys will have to bring whiteboard markers.
Okay.
Yeah, and then they already have projectors and screens and all that kind of stuff.
Perfect.
So anything else you can think of, and it's fine if you think of something later. This way we can have a start.
Right. Yeah. Nothing that I can think of right now. I think
Okay.
whatever we have, we can kind of make do.
Yep.
But yeah.
Yep. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Thanks for getting us a room.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, of course.
looking into what that was. Perfect.
Yeah. As first, I was like, we could do it. I'm not exactly sure how, but we'll figure something out.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyways.
Other guests may not like it in the lobby, but
Yeah,
We'll do
right.
I think you're muted, Katie.
I was gonna say, I was remembering 3 years ago, they was split. Like, where you had one room for middle school and high school, and you had to share it. And so there was, at least that was what you were told going into it. So
Right,
it was a little
yeah.
like, when I made the schedules, it was like, okay, who has the room? Do they have the room or do they have the room?
Right.
I'm like trying to like mush the schedules together so that it worked out.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's how it ended up in the end. I know nothing about what
It was
happens
not,
after
no.
this.
They ended up finding another room, so
Right next
yeah,
door.
great. Yeah. It worked out.
That's lovely.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
We'll
All
dig
right.
into it, and then if we have questions, you said we could email. So we'll shoot email
Absolutely,
questions.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I know this will be your y'all's, at least my bride's, second time doing a thing that I've written.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you at the end, if there's anything that you're like, this doesn't work,
Okay.
please let me know.
Okay.
You're like, please stop doing this thing whenever you write things for people because it doesn't work anymore.
Okay.
All right.
Will do. Well, last
It'd be
time
lovely
it was
to know,
great.
but you don't have to. But if you want to let me know that,
Sure.
It was great last time. So
on the off chance I get wrangled into it again.
Sounds good.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. for
Yeah,
your
thank you,
time.
guys.
Everyone has a great 4th of July.
You
You
too.
too.
Thank you.
All right. Dory, you want to stay on for just a second?
Okay. Yeah.
Who?
Dory.
Oh, Dory. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Bye, Carol.
Bye.
See ya.
All right, Dory. How are you?
I'm good. How are
Good.
you guys?
Good. Any questions that you have coming out of seeing the curriculum and everything?
Yeah, it was really helpful to kind of see it all laid out. I guess, and we're having another meeting on the 11th. Is that right?
7th, 11th, 8th.
So on the 8th, there's like an all volunteer meeting for like
Okay.
everyone who's a volunteer. So I don't think it'll be like a it won't be a super personal interactive
Okay.
meeting.
Okay.
And that's just if someone's available.
Yeah.
I think we'll need to do some communicating of how to. We'll need to make some changes to what we already had planned a little bit.
Yeah.
And then kind of figure out how to communicate those.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, like all the intro stuff on the Tuesday night that we had.
Yeah.
It looks like she has a lot of ideas already there, which is helpful.
Yeah.
And I think we can probably mix and match, pull things out that we want to do something else instead, and put something else in, or say we like this idea that she has better, or whatever. So
Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll probably need to rearrange some of those roles and everything, and
Yeah.
but yeah, I think it's helpful to have the curriculum and then now know where to go with it. So
Yeah, for sure. And then she was talking about like gift bags to set up at a table. Is that like the first evening? Is
Yeah.
that when we?
Yeah, they didn't do that the last time, but that's what I
Oh,
understood
okay.
too, like a welcome.
Okay.
But then it also
Yeah,
sounded
yeah.
like they did it again at the end. Did you hear
Oh,
her say
okay.
something at the end? Did I miss something?
I had ran to get my charger at the end, so I don't know
Ah.
about the end. But yeah, it sounded like it was like a welcome gift
I like the
almost,
welcome,
like a
Yeah.
which yeah,
I liked that.
at least it gives. I don't know, it's another thing, another touch point, especially when
Yeah.
it's more of we're just at a table.
hmm
So
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. And
Yeah.
then for like the small groups, like we stay with the same group of kids like the whole 4 days. Is that-
Yeah, that's
I
what
think
it
that'd be
sounds
the
like.
best
Yeah.
way to do
Yeah.
that.
Well, because then she mentioned in the small groups instead of the large. She did say you could do it in the large group. Last time we did large group, but giving some affirmation in the
Mhm.
group on a note card.
Oh,
Were you
yeah.
here for that. So I think we'd kind of need to be with the same group
Right.
to
Yeah.
offer
Keep that small
Yeah.
group together.
more intimate
Yeah.
affirmation.
Yeah. As well as just, I think as you're sharing stuff, it's going to be better if they've been together 2 days as opposed to someone new every day.
Yeah.
4 days seems so short.
Yes.
Yeah, it does.
4 days
Yeah.
to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I guess like what do we do if somebody like throws something out at us that like we're not 100% prepared for? Like, you know what I mean? I feel like sometimes kids, when they're like away from the people that they know all the time, they almost feel more open to share things.
Right.
Like how do we what do we do with that?
Yeah. I can remember in a counseling, like it was like a crash course in like teenage counseling
hmm
and youth ministry. And one of the things that always sticks out to me is like, don't be surprised. Like, even if you're like, oh my goodness,
hmm
just try and be like, thanks for sharing that. Like,
Yeah.
something almost underplay it a little bit so they're not like,
Mhm.
oh, they're shocked by what I just said.
Mhm.
But that might be something, depending on what it is, it's like, is that a follow up with them, like that one on one meeting, or is that more of a, come tell Tara or I, and did you catch all that, or did it blank out on you?
Like it blinked out a little
Blink
bit.
out. I did too for a second. I went white.
Yeah.
Could you hear it though?
No, sorry.
Oh,
Go
yeah.
back to like don't be shocked, and then
Yeah, and then just kind of follow up. Maybe that's a good time for that one-on-one. Like, hey, let's talk
Okay,
about
yeah.
this. Would you be interested in talking about it at lunch? Maybe it's appropriate to deal with it in the group, and maybe that's helpful. But also maybe
Mhm.
it's more of a, this isn't the place for that.
Yeah.
But we still want to address it. Or it might be something like, oh, you need to let Tara or Jared know, like,
Mhm.
and we can follow up with, parents or Carol or something like that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's definitely, you don't have to deal with it in the group. It might be a acknowledge it, but kind of hold it off until there's a chance to
Yeah.
do something more constructive with it.
And I think kind of like
Okay.
you do with the teenagers too here, kind of like thanks for sharing that. I would love to talk to you more about that later if
Mhm.
if you'd want to chat over dinner or something. Yeah, and you feel free to pull us in too if you're like, Sam, I need another person, or Tara,
Yeah.
come talk with me.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's nice when we're together. 'Cause it's like, okay, I don't know that I'm going to say the right thing.
Mhm.
Sometimes I feel like that. So
Yeah.
if there's another person, you can like make sure we're all
Yes.
on track here. We're guiding them to the right thing. It's just scary.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately, you're gonna do awesome. I think that you'll handle it really well. And we had some last time who did want to open up, and I was
Mhm.
concerned for self harm for one of them, but I didn't do anything, and that like played in my mind a bit. But so if any of that like is a fear or like a concern, even if
Mhm.
because there are some counselors there who we could even
Mhm.
mention. We could mention it to someone in charge, and they could maybe even set
Yeah.
up the parents or them with some kind of counseling, which I wish I had done the last time. But anyway, there are a lot of trained professionals in these areas there.
Yeah, there is resources
Yeah.
right there on the
Thankfully,
ground if we need it.
yes,
So
thankfully.
Yeah.
And that's what this time is meant for, too. Respite and guidance and counseling.
Mhm.
yeah, and I think going a little bit, you have to kind of feel out the group a little bit, but going a little heavy isn't a bad thing. Sometimes the rest of the group can actually help.
Yeah.
Especially, last time we had a family who lived in Beirut, and it was just after the blast in Beirut, and like
Mhm.
their brother had been thrown across like their apartment.
Wow.
Like I think he was fine, but there's definitely some capital T trauma from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know when I was in Budapest 6 years before that, like there was a girl who talked about like she wasn't there, but shortly after they left the mission field, the house that they met in for church, like someone shot a rocket propelled grenade into it.
Oh.
And I don't think
Wow.
anyone was in the building at the time, but it was just like,
I could have been there.
yeah, it was just like kind of secondary, like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, that was a dangerous situation. And I think that was where some of the other students kind of came around her a little bit, and it was a helpful
Mhm.
thing.
In a way that we don't really know how to necessarily
Yeah,
comfort.
yeah, something I've never experienced.
And like
So
these
Mhm.
kids with the earthquake too, it wasn't even their trauma was because of their brother's ongoing trauma. That was their main thing.
Right.
The earthquake itself was scary, but they were like, or blast, whatever it was scary, but they were okay. But because their brother was waking up with nightmares and night terrors,
Yeah.
that made it hard for them. Yeah. Anyway.
yeah, but definitely something that, as well as feeling out how to handle it at the time, but also kind of debriefing at the end of the day. We'll have
Mhm.
some time that we can all talk, whether it's at supper or before we leave the room. That's definitely a time to bring that up and be like, hey, just so you're aware.
Yeah.
Continue just to be aware and thoughtful of that. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. It was the emotions that brought out all the chat of emotions that brought out all the deep conversations.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Pulls it out. They went there.
Yeah.
We had one who wanted to deflect everything. But
Yeah.
in middle school, you'll have that. But
Yeah.
the rest of them went there.
And I think also there's the I think this can be a little bit harder to feel out of the person who's just monopolizing.
Mhm.
They may really need to do some processing, but
Mhm.
we don't want it to be, if it can be a help to the whole group to help them process,
Mhm.
that's great. If it's kind of a detriment where it's like they're constantly monopolizing,
Yeah.
that's where we might need to kind of move on, but then come back to that person and do that one-on-one or some other kind of meet up with them.
Story has
to give them, yeah, to give them the time to monopolize the conversation and get those things out, but not in the group sometimes.
Right.
So, yeah.
Which you've had experience with here. It's all the same.
Yeah.
All the same things.
Yep. Some things are different, but sometimes kids are kids.
Right.
People are people.
People are people,
Adults
kids are
do the
kids.
same thing.
Yes.
I probably do the same thing sometimes. Yeah.
Yep. So, yeah. We'll probably do some looking through curriculum, and we'll get that all sent out once she sends the final. All the little edits are made and everything.
Okay.
And we'll kind of work through what's the plan of how do we reorganize what everyone's doing. And,
Yeah.
I feel like this changed so much.
Yeah.
Maybe it won't in the end, but I was like, oh. Well, the whole photo. What am I trying to say? Picture thing. Scavenger
Oh, the
hunt.
scavenger?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's like because we did that the last time and it was a hit, and thought
Yeah.
we were gonna. That's okay. It's good. Everybody gets to do it. It's a good thing. But Christine and Claire were on it. So
Yeah.
bummer.
and they can
So-
still be
Yeah.
in
Still
charge
do
of it,
it?
and well, I mean, it's part of it.
That's like the
She has it in
whole
the curriculum.
everyone.
Yeah.
Oh. See, I'm confused.
I'm
I need to
confused
look
too.
at this curriculum. I thought this was a large group thing. Everybody, the whole group of students.
I know she
see.
talked about like
Oh,
we could
okay.
break it into groups, we could have it competitive, like
Oh,
we can change that up.
So we're in charge of our own age group in even the scavenger hunt.
Yeah.
Oh, I looked at that wrong.
Yep. No, it's not middle school and high school and
I was like everyone.
Adults.
together. This is chaos, but let's
Yeah.
do it. Okay.
400 people on the resort doing a scavenger hunt.
Taking pictures everywhere. Sorry, Americans.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
So
So I was also thinking if Jared's not sure of it, so you can see it, tell me yes or no. The photo,
Mhm.
having like a photo booth in the room. Do you think they'd want to take just so they can utilize those photos with like fun backgrounds or props?
Mm-hmm.
But they're not fairy lights, but it's like a string of lights that can you see
Mhm.
it's like a string of lights, but then just have like shorter strings coming down. I thought we could kind
Yeah.
of hang that in front of some kind of sheet or backdrop of sorts. I don't know. Unless you're
Yeah,
like,
I
"Nah,
think that's a
not
cute
cool."
idea.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I feel like the girls at least would love that.
That's what he said. He's like, that sounds girly. She said we have a lot of girls,
I mean,
right?
Yeah.
and maybe instead of a sheet we do like whatever one of those backdrops are that she linked
Suggested.
to.
Yeah.
You know, that it
Oh, yeah,
ties
like
into
a-
a theme of sorts and
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, this is gonna be so good. I just wish it was a month ago. We can do this.
Yeah.
We are. I don't even know how many days out. What day is this? The third.
16
16
days, almost to the
16 days.
16 minutes and 16
minutes.
days.
Are you
Uh,
packed? I'm not.
16 days and 21 minutes until we fly out.
Okay.
Oh, that's crazy.
So, yeah,
That'd be great.
it will be great.
Yeah.
It's all gonna come together. Actually, Sam's already getting the snacks, and she has colorful Skittles. That will be great
Oh,
for the
great.
game if we wanted to use it.
Mhm.
It'll be great. It's gonna be great. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you can relook at that sheet and move yourself around if you're like, never mind.
Right.
Or,
Okay.
yes, that's what I want to do.
You were in the call, so you
Okay.
get
That's
first
right.
dibs.
That's right. And then Emily, oh yeah, news. Did you hear Emily Weiser is joining our trip?
Oh, she
She has a
is.
ticket.
Okay,
She's
awesome.
rooming with you. I
Yep.
hope you don't
Oh,
mind.
sweet.
Okay.
Okay. No,
We're so
yeah,
excited. She's
that'd be great.
registered and everything. She's all set.
Dora's
Awesome.
like, man, I was gonna have a room to myself.
Oh. Queen says that. No. It'll be good. I'm so
Yeah.
excited. So she's gonna fill in that too. So
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
it'll be so good. Anything else, Tori, for you?
I don't think so. But I guess I'll text or call if anything comes up.
Perfect.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
good. So thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Looking forward to it, Dory.
Yeah, me too.
All right. See ya.
Awesome.
Great. Bye.
Bye. That'll be